So I think most of you guys are aware that I made a killer version of this one a couple weeks ago, and I thought that, since I did one for killers, I should probably do one for survivors, since that's the main kind of group that people play as in this game. So I got like 100 people to fill out a form, and I got a bunch of results now, and basically I'm just ranking them from the easiest to the hardest. There was a lot of mixed opinions, so I'll explain those when they show up. I'll probably throw in some of the numbers as well, and I just intend for this to be a ranking of who's the easiest, who's the hardest, and also just kind of separating the survivors into groups of who are easier to play and who are the harder ones to use, if that makes sense. I'll probably explain more throughout the video. Anyways, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very long video, since I have 50 survivors to rank. Just sit back, maybe get a drink of water, just get settled, get your backpack from Dora or whatever, and just enjoy. If you don't think a survivor is ranked well, you can yell at me in the comments or something. I will try to read over most of the comments and give an educated reply, because I think I know a few things about this game. I'm gonna explain my thought process along with try to interpret the word of the community or whatever, their ancient scripts and writings, and that's about it. I'm going to try and finish this video quickly because I doubt anybody wants to listen to me talk for any more than 20 minutes. The easy category, if the name doesn't really help, is just meant for people looking to have a decent time while playing, and I don't blame you. Some people just want to have fun in the game. Basically, this group of survivors is just any survivor who has really simple mechanics, abilities, or their ability just makes it easier to play the game. First one on the list is Riley, and almost 80% of people who took the poll agreed that he was probably the easiest character to use. He basically just gets to take another hit before going down. His chase stats are great, and that's really the only thing he has going for him. He's just fun to use, good for beginners, and really that's about it. Just an extremely straightforward character in general. Next is Jun, and he has kind of the same philosophy as Riley. He gets to take extra hits before he goes down, one for each life, and he's just fun to use. He's really easy to just get the hang of because there's not really much to his whole kit or whatever, and he's one of few characters that kind of have the same memo with taking hits for others that actually benefit from it himself, which is getting more stamina. Next is Elizabeth, and objectively she has some of the best stats for a looper. 9-8 for speed and stamina is just absurd, along with 9 healing, and the other, 3 stats, repair, stealth, composure. You could really work without them, especially if you could loop the killer pretty much forever, and her ability is just overall really useful. Next is Nami, and one of the common themes of this easy category is that a lot of the abilities here are just passive effects. They don't really require any input, and they just kind of are there. So Nami has a base 65% undetectable chance, and she gets a repair boost if she gets detected. That's really about it. Her stats are fine, and it's just she's just alright, if that makes sense. Now, with a 0.1 difference in ranking, we have Gabriella, and she's just a gen rusher with a little beep boop goober machine or something along this line. I don't know how to explain it. It just shows how far the killer is from you with a number, probably in studs, which is a weird Roblox measurement, which really isn't that good. But Gabriella is just really easy to use, understand, and that's really the extent of her kit. There's not much else to it. Ryder is next, and he has one of the most boring abilities in the game. His kind of active ability just reveals the killer if you're in chase for long enough, and his little passive thing just kind of shows the locations of vaults, and it's really useful when you've just started out and you don't know any of the map layouts. And I think that's what they intended this character to be, just helping beginners learn maps and loops. But he's boring, and you really don't have to think when you play as him, so his placement is really obvious. Cora is next, and she's another case of just being a passive effect. Basically, whenever a generator gets done, you get to see where everybody is. They did a UI, overhaul this last update. It looks really good. That's besides the point, but Cora is just really simple, really basic. She's probably the easiest gen rusher, in my opinion. You don't really do much with any sort of ability, and that's about it for her. She's just alright. Now on to Adriana. She's also just really basic. She's quiet and undetectable when she's not moving, which is like the basis for a lot of stealth abilities, just either not moving, not doing anything, or just inability. It's more of a passive effect, I'd say. It is really good for beginners who want to try out stealth characters but don't want to use any of those really crazy difficult ones or complex or important timing. You're basically just undetectable when you're doing anything besides moving. Next we have Seyoung, and she really isn't a support character here. She's just an all-rounded character with a detection ability. She basically just detects when people are downed, killed, or there's detection. It really isn't that helpful, but the only useful thing about her is that she's really good with stats and whatnot. And I think that's what puts her in the easy category, is just how effective she is at everything. She can basically do whatever she wants. Now we have Taylor, and they are very straightforward. They basically just boost the gen progress of anybody who's on the gen with them, so that they have a faster repair speed overall. There really isn't much else to their kit besides this whole playing a supportive gen rusher role, and that's really where I think they get their placement from, is just having to rely on their team, which it's easy to do. Now we have Daejong, and his ability is just super easy. Just get revives to revive quicker. It is just more of a side objective to get revives, rather than you have to focus on your ability. It's just nice to have that extra 4 to 5 revive speed or whatever, and his stats are amazing, as most supports are, so it's just really easy to play as him. Now we have Yona, or I think it's Yeona, something like that. Now we have Yona, and she's basically just like a joint Seyoung. She can detect the killer a lot, but she has a lot more chase-oriented stats, which is why she falls into the looper category. And she's less of an all-rounder, which is, upsetting, but she's just easy to use. She's fun to use, I think. And it just provides for safer gameplay overall. Next we have Becca, and it's another instance where she just has a passive ability that makes her better as people start to die in the round. She just gets better repair and more undetectable chance. She is extremely simple. She's very just straightforward. You don't really need much input with the ability. It just kind of happens on its own, which is very nice, especially for the additions that it gives you. Now we have Amon, which actually had a tie between easy and moderate, but I decided to put her in easy because she kind of fits with the motif of taking extra hits, surviving longer, or having a passive effect or ability that really just makes her easy to use. She just gets to take a hit, run away, and then she's better at generators. It's extremely straightforward once you get a really general basis of it. Now we have Yvonne, and she's basically kind of in the same regards as Seyoung, where if somebody gets down, killed, or the killer detects, she gets a little boost, which is a speed boost and a generator boost, which is just a better Seyoung too. And she has really good stats overall, before the nerf that she got, so that really just makes her a good character, but she's also, like, extremely simple to use, which is nice for beginners. Sarah is next, and I think she's here because of just how unconventional her playstyle is. You take a lot of the core mechanics of Daybreak and kind of just throw them out the window, which takes away the difficulty of her because you're playing in such an easy way compared to the actual normal game mechanics. She basically just gets boosts when she's not with her team, which honestly I think can be a little difficult to pull off, but you know, I'm still a little confused as to why she's in the easy category, so if you want to enlighten me in the comments sections, please do. Now we have Iris, and this vote was very divided. She has one of the lowest, like, percents of agreements out of this entire poll, and I think a lot of this comes from just the nature of Iris. She's prone to getting targeted because she has bad stats, and she's really helpful to the team. You know, she's also really easy because her ability just immediately gets value, and if you know how to loop, she is objectively one of the best characters in the entire game. Next we have Serena. Hold on, we're talking about the other Serena. You know, it's kind of dumb that they have two characters with the same name. I don't even know when they were both released, but it's probably also kind of dumb. Rant out of the way, here's the actual Serena. She's just a pretty alright character. She's more in the respective of a passive ability, which is honestly, her ability is honestly really helpful for her entire team. She reveals the killer to herself, and the killer also has like a sort of trail when they kill someone or down someone, which is just like a nice ability for your entire team to use. And if you're a good player, you can tell your team where the killer is. Overall, she's just a pretty simple character though. That's it for the easy category, and we are 12 minutes into the video. If you are somehow already at this point, I congratulate you. I'm so sorry you have to put up with me for the next probably 30 more minutes at this rate. Anyways, on to the moderate section. Now we are in the moderate category, and you gotta put on your big boy shoes, your little backpack or whatever. You gotta put on your seatbelts. You gotta be safe, because these characters are a lot more complex and a lot more challenging to use than the ones in the easy category. Not just because, you know, their abilities are just passive effects, but because, you know, stat spreads are gonna be a lot more different, and overall just things aren't going to be as clear. There's a lot more creativity when it comes to playing these characters. First off, we have Jonas, and he is probably the most accurate representation of all the characters in the moderate category. His ability requires some timing with the speed boost and kind of the delay from the actual like meat of his ability, which is the vault speed. But besides that, there really isn't much else to it. It requires some thought and effort put into it, but otherwise the ability is fairly bare to bone. Now we have Jan, I'm going to say Jan. Now we have Jan, and her difficulty mainly comes from map awareness and just understanding where to go on pretty much every map, which takes a little bit of time to do, but once you get the hang of it, she becomes a lot easier compared to a lot of characters. Now we have Kyle, and he kind of falls into the same category as Jan, or however you say her name, where he requires a lot of map awareness and just knowing what is going on in a map and where things are. And he also takes a lot of just good positioning and like intuition almost to kind of guess if a trap will actually block a doorway, which, you know, 95% of the time it will. Now we have Xiaojing, I think. Why is there so many hard characters' names to pronounce? Anyways, now we have Xiaojing, and her ability is pretty simple at face value. It just gives you a small speed boost when you use it, but I like to see it as more of a support tool, or has support capabilities where you could help your team get to places faster or save them from taking hits. But that's just me, I don't know. This poll might have been, dictated on something else, but overall, Xiaojing is just very straightforward. Next is Kelvin, and he's basically just like Gavin or Dakota, but you really don't have to aim as much. You just need to kind of shoot in the general area of the killer and hope that it hits something nearby so that they can get scanned. Of course, it's always fun to go for like headshots or direct hits for that extra little bit of XP and, reveal time. But besides that, there really isn't an incentive to actually hit the killer with your ability, and it's just basically a yawn radar, but worse. Next is IG, or AG, I'm gonna say IG, and he's pretty simple as well. You just get the camera, you could flash the killer, blind them for a little bit, and you also get to go invisible, which is, pretty fun. But really, all IG takes is a decent idea of when to use your ability, which doesn't take too long to understand, and also just good pathfinding and understanding what path to take to get out of a situation. Now we have Parker, and he's fairly simple as well. You just pretty much select what you want your ability to do, either speed yourself up, add the extra gen speed or extra revive time, and just use it. It's very simple, very easy. It has some value just kind of everywhere, but overall it's just a fun and honestly straightforward ability. Next is Amari, and I think he's a little weird in the regards that, he's a looper and he's meant to distract the killer, but he can disappear pretty much immediately after starting chase and end it unless the killer is like either really good at finding you or hits you as soon as you activate the ability, which is, a fairly rare instance. But, overall his ability is very simple. You just need to be in chase for long enough. Next is Crystal, and there's a little bit of strategy into choosing who you want to give your ability to and all that, but overall basically you just give your ability to someone and that's about it to your kit. That's all you'll do in a match pretty much ever, because your chase stats aren't necessarily the best, and your gen stats are okay, but that's really where it ends. Now we have Memo, and I think a lot of people will disagree in this regards, probably in the comments, but honestly I think this is really fair. Her bat hitboxes are really big, and there's like a 3 to 4 second time frame where you can actually stun the killer with the ability. Her chase stats are really good, and you could basically extend a loop indefinitely if you play her right. And it's just fun to do, and moderate category is like perfect for her. Now we have Makoto, and her ability is honestly more passive than it is like an active ability. Basically you just want to press your sprint button whenever you think you're in a dangerous situation or you need to gain distance from the killer. The requirements are very low, with only having to hit like 4 or 5 skill checks. I don't remember the exact number, but you get rewarded for doing kind of what you need to do as a gen rusher, and then getting a speed boost afterwards. Now we have Sarah Vera, or the other Serena, and she's more in the regards of Amari, where you just need to be in chase for long enough in order to use her ability. There isn't much complications when it comes to actually trying to use this ability well. It's just understanding which vaults are safe, which vaults aren't safe, and she's just a lot better as a tool to distract rather than, Amari, you stinky Amari or whatever, I don't know, he's okay. Now here's Raynor, and his shield is mostly just creativity, which, a lot of Raynor players don't use anymore. A lot of Raynors I see recently just do the shield tech where you stand in the shield and you become invincible or whatever. And, heads up, you're boring and I don't like you. But other than that, Rainer, he's really only a little bit higher than easy because his shield requires like a little bit of thought into what you want to do with it. I mean, the timing really isn't important, it's just whether you put it down or not. Alright, now we have Dakari. He's pretty alright, I'd say. His difficulty mostly comes from, like aiming and whatnot and projectiles. But unlike Gavin or Dakota, you're not really punished as much for missing. You can have so many bullets in your gun at once that missing is only like a small little road bump. If you have enough ammo, it basically means nothing. But besides, the aiming and whatnot, Dakari is like just middle of the ground difficulty. Now we have Sadia, and this ranking honestly surprised me a lot, considering that in the game she's rated 4 stars, and I even rated her as extremely hard in my own poll, because I put my own opinion in there. But Sadia being in moderate also kind of makes a lot of sense. She's kind of in the same area as Amari, just a weaker and not as effective ability. Your ability heavily revolves around one-way vaults and just the killer not being able to follow you, so I feel like that is a little bit of an issue. And you need a lot of map awareness, just understanding where the vaults are to actually make a decent usage of her ability, and especially just like what vaults go to where. But moderate is still alright, I am not gonna argue with that. Now we have Yara, and I feel like her placement is like really justified. Her active ability requires at least a little bit of timing with just getting your stamina back, and her passive is also just kind of good for timing. The speed boost, you don't want to waste that, you don't want to waste your stamina. It takes some pretty decent stamina conservation to actually use Yara in a good and effective way. And overall, I just think the amount of ability usage and like paying attention to the game is like perfect for this category. Here we have Jack, and I honestly agree with this rating. Jack kind of works off the idea that Adriana had with, undetectable when doing X, and Jack is just more fun in that regard, since instead of just standing still, you need to be crouching, and you also get to move faster while crouching. It just makes for a more enjoyable stealth experience, and you don't feel like you're locked to one position when you're trying to actually be stealthy. You can move around and, actually be sneaky, not just hide in a corner or locker camp or whatever else you're doing. Now, Elijah, personally, I rated him a little bit higher, but moderate is also fair too. The little bit of setup you need to do with the locker, that takes a little bit of skill, but overall, the amount of thought and effort put into it otherwise is just kind of not really there. You just hop in a locker for 5 seconds and just pray to the gods, hope that somebody has enough functioning brain cells to walk by the locker that has the big little yellow thing next to it. Elijah is just, he's alright. I think he's pretty okay for this category. Akil is next. I think it's Akil, I don't know. And I don't see why he's here. You basically just hit skill checks, and you get to make the gen go quicker. It goes, the little bar at the bottom goes wee, or whatever. I just don't get it, It might be the whole, like, gen rusher syndrome, or whatever, where characters are difficult because they have bad chase stats, like, overall. Overall, I think he's a little bit on the easier side, but that's probably why he was, like, so hard to rate, Alright, now here's the poster child of Daybreak 2. You got Arlo. Arlo, I think, is, like, he's a good support. He's okay. There isn't much too special about him. He just does revives better. He gives a little shield for, like, the 1 in a million instance of the killer's camping. But besides that, there really isn't much to it. You basically can just do risky revives without getting punished as much, which I think we really needed a character like that. And Arlo, I think, is, like, perfect here. I've said that a lot, but, you know, I can't decide things. I'm that little kid who says, that was my favorite.
Fuck you, you little shit!
Next is Callum, and his main, like, kind of thing is that you really need to understand who to prioritize with your ability. You know, you could always just give it to your best bud in the server or whatever, but that would make some poor gen rushers or just people with bad chase stats kind of cry. You can directly buff literally anybody in the entire game just at will, and you kind of want to use Callum like that. Callum just requires a little bit of thinking, not too much, but enough to kind of push him into the moderate section. And lastly, in the moderate section, we have Emil, which honestly, it surprised me. It came off as like someone I didn't expect to be in moderate. Emil requires a lot of teamwork to really just use well, and also if your team just doesn't understand exactly what they're doing, you won't be able to get as much use of your ability. Everybody on your team needs to know what Emil does and be willing to give you revives. You know, that kind of trifles with Emil a lot, but, you know, it just works. Alright, so this is the hard section. If you use any of these 8 survivors who survive the onslaught of the easy and moderate category, you deserve to be a top tier gamer or whatever. You get a high five, you get a pat on the back, something like that. I don't know. First in the hard category we have Dakota, and I don't even think that Dakota is that hard. Her ability is just that weird and that bad because first of all, the projectiles are very close range and they don't work sometimes, which is a little weird. Also, just the slowdown isn't as good as it could be. It could be way better than it is currently now. But honestly, overall, Dakota kind of deserves this spot. She is very hard to use effectively just because of how outlandish her ability is compared to most survivors or loop. Next to the chopping block is Crosby. Crosby really is like an interesting character. He requires a lot of just map knowledge and understanding of routes to get to kicked gens. And there's also a lot of uses for his ability. If you want to use it to maybe extend a chase a little bit, you could do that. If you want to use it to become undetectable and try and skip out on detection, you can. If you want to just get gen progress back, you can do that too. Overall, Crosby is just really good all around for a gen rusher, and his ability is just really nice. Next is Emery, and his difficulty can be very easily summed up. His first off, his chase stats are objectively one of the worst in the game. He has the lowest speed out of any character, and honestly, his ability actually takes a thought and time in using it. You need to understand where the killer is at your current moment, where the killer might be going, if you have enough time to teleport if the killer is coming at you, and overall, it's just a lot to think about when playing Emery. Alright, now we have Ironica, and her difficulty, it's kind of makes sense. It's more of a passive effect. Basically, when anybody gets down near you, you get a shield, you get a speed boost, you get a undetectable chance, and you get a really large gen speed repair buff, which honestly already is a lot. But, there's a lot of ways to make use of this ability, since it's only 10 seconds. You gotta make as much use as you can with the time frame. You could gen rush with Ironica, if you're weird and someone just happens to get down nearby. You could be a little greedy, you could go for revives. You could just kind of do your own thing. There's a little risk to when you're playing Ironica. I don't really see the difficulty, but the amount of playstyles that you could choose from is honestly kind of helping to this factor. It pains me to say it, but Sanjana is next. I was really hoping that she would be higher on this list. The timing you need to actually avoid detection is really tight. Since you only have a 15-second ability, you have to pretty much time it perfectly. or else you just kind of waste your ability, you know? And I think that makes her a very difficult survivor to use, just because of how tight the timing is for avoiding detection compared to other stealth characters. I'm not even going to add a transition for this one, because we only have 3 survivors left, and there's 2 categories to go, which is concerning, because I was hoping there would be much more of a kind of spread out compared to the killers, because this video is just like the killer one, where a lot of the meat of the video was in the moderate section, and there wasn't really much else in the other ones. And this is following after it. I just want more characters to kind of be around the place, rather than people being like, yeah, all the characters deserve to be in one spot. First off, we have Gavin, which I think that was fairly self-explanatory. Basically, you just aim. Aiming is really just all Gavin is about. And projectile speed is like weird. It follows the same as Slasher's knife. It should be a hit scan, in my opinion, but I don't know. It makes him difficult if it has the like bullet travel time or whatever. Getting stuns with him is weird, and his stun isn't even that good, really. It's only 2.25 seconds, like, at most. I think they buffed it, I'm not sure. But overall, Gavin is underwhelming and also just difficult to use because, you know, bullet travel time and aiming and whatnot, so I feel like his spot in very hard is justified. Alright, and last in the very hard category is Nathan, which honestly, I really didn't expect up until I saw the last votes, and then it kind of dawned upon me that this really makes a lot of sense. The timing is fairly tight with him, and to use his ability is just like a very, very, very short period of time. You need to be, and that doesn't even account for if the killer swings or not. You need to either be a smart Nathan or hope that the killer doesn't know what Nathan does or how to counter him. So overall, he's pretty difficult. Alright, that's all for the very hard category, and last we have the extremely hard category. It's Lyndon. It was always Lyndon. Lyndon is just objectively the hardest character in this game. Timing is 2 seconds, which is the smallest out of any other character in this game, and his value is just like really, really, really high, if that makes sense. Any good killer will go after a good Lyndon, and, you know, overall just trying to time his ability well it's a daunting task. Anyways, thank you for everyone who made it to the end of this 30-minute long video. I'm so sorry this took so long to make. I think the length of this video is very clear on just how big of a project this was. Subscribe, we're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Bye bye.